Hi, I'm Graham Harle. I'm the CEO of Gleeds. Gleeds are a global real estate and construction consultancy business. We've got around 80 offices around the world, employing 2,000 people. So we're involved with the management of construction projects in the commercial real estate sectors, but also in public sector clients. Heavily involved in the energy and infrastructure businesses around the world. And I've been at Gleeds for 26 years.
Wow.
Thoroughly enjoy working in the business. The culture is fantastic. And welcome to the Inspiring Leadership show with Jonathan Bowman-Perks.
Thank you very much, Zeke. Well, Graham, it's great having you here. And it was Graham Keane of the Artemis Partnership who introduced us both. Lovely having you on the show, and let's perhaps go straight into the journey that took you over those 26 years and before that. Young lad, where did you all begin? I'm hearing a bit of an East London accent, but how did life begin at the beginning? How has it influenced the leader you are today as the CEO of Gleeds?
Yeah, no, I've family were from the East End originally. Still strong connections there. But like a lot of post-war generations, families moved kind of north and east, away from the East End. So still a strong heritage there, but most of my family are now in Essex, Suffolk and Hertfordshire. I had a fantastic upbringing with a very strong family, very East End kind of ethos running through there. So very good, strong family around me, all still together and alive. And when I was young, I was very focused on my sport, on learning. I loved learning and still a very big advocate of learning and reading. So yes, I spent a great kind of schooling years. And I got to my A-levels, completed my A-levels. And I was at a bit of a crossroads in my life. I had the opportunity to go to university, but I also had other keen sporting interests at play at that time, and I enjoyed travelling a lot. So I actually made the decision to do a part-time degree course, an apprenticeship program, and I went into the world of quantity surveying, which is now termed cost management. Had a fantastic apprenticeship program with a small little company in Soho, West End of London, and then got qualified as a surveyor, and moved on to Gleeds. And I think the key thing for me was that journey I went through on my part-time degree, and the travelling that it allowed me to do, plus the working, plus balancing all of my sport, really gave me a strong foundation for the rest of my career. The multitasking of personal commitments and working commitments, and then throw in the family as well, allowed me to achieve all of that. So yeah, I got really great memories of my upbringing and where I got to where I am today.
Yeah, and it is interesting that many of the CEOs and the leaders and explorers and special forces guys and generals that we interview, they've all had sport as a key part of their life and their upbringing to give them that drive, that competitive streak. But who among your family, and a strong family you mentioned in the East End, even though they scattered to the home counties, who particularly gave you the sort of your foundational values and what you stand for today?
My father. My father was was in what GEC became GC Marconi, was very involved with the design of whether it's missile guidance systems for the European fighter or whether it was the MRI scanners for the NHS. Very diverse business in terms of what they did and the magnetrons they're involved with. But so from a business perspective, it was my father, but also GC had a lot of international clients. So our house was constantly full of people from around the world as my father entertained them as they came to visit GC, and they stayed with us. And that was really important for me as well in terms of that multinational. We went traveling a lot as a family when we were young, and seeing all those different cultures as they played a big part in my life.
Yeah.
So yeah, my father and my uncle as well, who was also involved with GC and rank as well. So yeah, they were both very strong, good engineers. So yeah, those were the two big influences at that time.
Yeah, very, very, very nice to know there was that foundation and a father figure you could look to. And as you were growing up, we all have some proudest moments, some happiest moments, but also some really tough, dark moments, personally or work-wise. What about proudest moments and what you learned from them? And then what about darkest moments?
Growing up, or I mean, it's
growing up.
My proudest moments growing up were the achievements I made in sport, and that's continued to be with me all the way through my life. There are some regrets in there that I could probably achieve more, but at the time.
What did you achieve? What were your sports, Graham? What did you do?
Well, I was football. So played until I was 38, and then went into coaching both junior teams and district football, which I thoroughly enjoy. And I kind of retired a couple of years ago, but miss it incredibly. And for me, it was about also adding to communities and societies, and I did a lot of money raising for children as well. So I was very proud of what I've given to sport and what I've achieved, and that sport still plays an incredible important part to my life. I think that it was funny. I don't really have any dark moments when I was growing up, but the darkest moment that I've had in my life was the suicide of my wife's brother.
Oh God, I'm sorry.
Which was about 10 years ago, just over 10 years ago.
Wow.
That's right. I mean, it was, I look back and it puts it all into back in perspective. Sometimes we think about dark moments, but that obviously incredibly very difficult on family, but it has motivated me to be aware of people's mental health and from a business and personal perspective. And as a business now, we are focused on charity work for mind. We've got a very strong ethos running through the business about mental health awareness. We've trained over 40 mental health first aiders. So out of something that was very dark, I'm hoping that we can do a lot of good, and I'm really keen that we do more with Mind as a charity going forward. It's been our charity of choice for the last 2 years. I want to do more now. We're coming out of the pandemic, but yeah, I mean it has. I'm hoping that out of that dark place, a lot of good will come from it, and that's the story of life, isn't it? We're out of adversity, you've got to learn from it and try and bring something good out of it.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned about the mental health. It's been such a topic among the other CEOs and leaders. And my wife 6 years ago set up a charity for mental health and vulnerable girls, modern day slavery, trafficking, abuse. And as you can imagine, in the pandemic, there's been a lot of young girls stuck at home with their abusers in London and around the area. And so we must get you to talk at some stage to that group. They'd find it quite powerful.
No, I'd be delighted to. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it particularly because these young girls who are looking for role models, men and women, that they can look up to, but think that they're all perfect and they never had any of the problems that they've had.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, thank you, Graham. Yeah. And imagining going back and meeting Graham Harle, age 16 or 18, that kind of age, what bit of, now you know all the things you've done and the mistakes you've made and the lessons you've learned, if you could go back in a time machine and meet yourself and go, listen, mate, there's just one bit of advice I'd give you to don't worry about this or focus on that. What would be your advice?
My strongest bit of advice now would be always have a goal. Always have a goal. And, I constantly have goals, whether it's a goal for the business or my personal life, but always have a goal, always have a plan of how you're going to get to that goal or a strategy to get to that goal. And always remember that that plan can change. You always have hurdles in life that we have, or barriers that we have to deal with. We've had the biggest one over the last 12 months. But ultimately, your goal should never change. You should have a goal that you will aspire to. It gives us great motivation in life, gives us purpose. And I think having that goal, having that goal with a plan to get there is incredibly important. And I would say to any youngster today, always have a plan or a goal in life, however aspirational it is.
Yeah.
Because there are ways to get there. And I think the final point of that is you only learn as you get older is listening to people and their advice of how you can achieve that goal.
Yeah.
Because when you're young, you think you can achieve anything on your own. So a goal with a strong plan that you can change along the way, and listening to advice would be my advice.
Great advice. And I'm reminded of Mike Tyson, who said, if you remember, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth.
Yes, exactly right.
But no plan survives the first meeting with the enemy was one of the old military maxims. And you can have this great plan, and like the enemy was, of course, COVID. Yeah. And I don't think anybody had a plan in 2020 and 2021 for it to be the way it is now.
No. And it's really funny. I've been just reviewing our goal of where we want to get to as a business. Our goal hasn't changed from where we were 15 months ago. Our plan has changed considerably, and there are other areas of the business that have become more important. So, and that is a classic example of how the goal hasn't changed, but the plan has.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important.
Yeah, great one. So let's go around the Inspiring Leadership Compass, and we did that from our research, as you may know, Graham, from what makes high-performing leaders and teams, and also that high potential. And so the elements that we found from research, MQ was the first one. Your foundational values, the values you hold dear, having been brought up by your role model like your father and your uncle. Yeah. But also how do they align with the values that you hold dear in Gleeds, and what happened when you've let it slip, and how did you get yourself back?
Yeah, values to me, the importance of values to me over the last 12 months are just absolutely incredible. From a business perspective, our values all around our people, our clients, and having a personality. And what's really interesting is, for me, it was all about the well-being of our staff in the pandemic and protecting jobs, which we've been very successful at both. With our clients, it was around the communication, the authenticity and honesty that goes with that as well. Our clients needed us more than ever as a trusted advisor and a support. And in terms of all of that, it was around maintaining a sense of personality and culture. And those dynamics, I think a lot of businesses have said they've been incredibly proud by how their staff have responded, and I would endorse that 100%. Our staff globally have been absolutely magnificent, and I think so. And it's really enforced those values for me that we will stick with for going forward. 100%. It's allowed the business to flourish. And I'm extremely encouraged by the future. I think if you haven't got a set of values that you can align yourself with, it will affect morale, it'll affect performance, and it will affect culture. And without culture, what have you got? From a personal perspective, for me, as talking earlier, it revolves a lot around my mental and physical well-being for myself and my family. And those values for me are really around my well-being, the honesty, and the determination that I have with my goals. I value good behaviours, but I also value looking out for people, being kind and generous, and the charity work that I've done gives me huge satisfaction. I know if any of those slip, my life just isn't in balance. And once I'm out of balance, whether it's a business or personal perspective, it's not good for anyone. Yeah. So I'm very conscious of constantly looking in the mirror, making sure I've got my balance.
Yeah, it's a really good point, Graham. When we're, I remember there's that story of the man who's trying to keep his young sort of 5-year-old son busy, and he's got a map of the world from a magazine, and he rips it out, yeah. and he chops it up into small bits, and he gives it to his son as a sort of like a jigsaw, and he says, "There you go, son. Play with that." Hopes it's going to keep him busy. Anyway, the son's doing it on a glass tabletop, and he comes back and he's got it all together, and he goes, "How did you do that?" He said, "Well, Dad, on the back there's a picture of a man, and I looked under the glass, and he said, when I put the man together, the world was all together." And I thought that's just such a lovely analogy. When the man's together, the world's together. And it's quite a good little analogy, isn't it?
I like that. It is very much.
Yeah. PQ is about meaning and purpose. What gives your life meaning and purpose, and the mission and the vision you have for Gleeds. What gives your life meaning and purpose? Your sort of calling, about why you do what you do. To be 26 years in one organization, that's real commitment. And there must have been something that kept you committed to that sense of meaning and purpose in the work you did.
Yeah, and for me, purpose has been a word that I've looked at myself over the last 12 months. The purpose of Gleeds is to help shape the built environment. But it's only when I was out on a long walk last summer when I really, and we're at the height of the pandemic, we were involved with building, the hospitals, certain hospitals, we accelerated programs to allow them to be available for COVID patients. We were involved with like the Nightingale programs and the Rainbow programs in Wales. And it really made me reconsider what our true purpose was as a business. It wasn't just about shaping the built environment. It was about, it was actually building hospitals that were saving people's lives. It was about building schools and universities that educate our children. It was about building wind farms to improve the carbon footprint or reduce carbon. And it really then, once I delved under what was our strapline, I really understood our true purpose, and I keep saying to my colleagues in the business about our true purpose, and it's really some of the management meetings we had last summer where people were feeling a bit down, deflated, and we've had it. People talk about COVID fatigue. When I actually talk about our purpose, you can feel them lift. It's like suddenly, I understand it now. It's not just about working in an office. My purpose in life is to actually build these hospitals to save people's lives. And once you actually find that purpose, people just again, that lifting, the morale goes up, the mental health improves. So for me, I love buildings. I love what we do as a business and the different types of buildings and sectors we're involved with. But now for me and the business, we really understand what our purpose is in society and communities. And taking that into my personal life, my purpose is just to live life to the full. And by that, it's, by being physically fit, mentally fit. We love adventures as a family. We certainly miss those. But it's just to live life to the full, and when one gets to the end of life, to look back and not have any regrets or saying, I wish I'd done that. I want to get to the end and go, you know, I've achieved everything.
To cross the line with the screech of burning tires and go, wow, what a ride.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah. So a purpose, again, incredibly important from the last 12 months, and it was important before, but now going underneath it really drives me, certainly.
Well, I won't charge you for this, but I'm sure that your sense of purpose is building with purpose. I mean, that could be your strapline, isn't it? Building with purpose. How about that? Exactly. That's your new strapline.
I might make a note of that. Yeah.
Right now, building with purpose. But it is interesting, just talking to the CEO of National Nuclear Laboratories, which is all about the future of nuclear, whether it be sort of to space, or it might be our nuclear deterrent, or whatever it might be. This idea of what can be done, you know, for curing for cancer and things like that. And he said, you know, having a purpose-driven business has really motivated them all. And so I don't give up on what you're doing about bringing everybody back to the clear burning why. Simon Sinek, who I like listening to his TED Talks, is, you know, getting to the why. And this is very much in all the work I did as an army officer for 20 years before my 21 years in business, which was that he who has a clear burning why can cope with any what or how. And that was Nietzsche. And just as a philosopher saying, if you have a why, you can cope with anything else. But when people don't know why they're doing what they're doing, you can end up anywhere. You talked in your purpose. You talked in your purpose about living life to the full, health and well-being, which takes us on to the next component, the third component, which is health quotient, health, well-being, mental health, physical health. What do you do to keep yourself physically and mentally healthy? And how do you pick yourself up when you let yourself slip and perhaps you've not done enough training, or you've eaten some pretty ghastly food and drunk far too much, or whatever it might be?
No, I've like I say, sport has been an important part of my life, from joining a football team when I was 4-year-old to get my first road bike when I was 10.
Oh, right.
So I can still remember it as an Eddie Merckx Harle road bike.
Eddie Merckx, God, you take me back now.
Yeah. So, you know, it's been a massive part of my life, and it's you know, I train 5 to 6 times a week, a mixture of cycling, running. I love swimming and miss swimming. But yeah, at the moment, running, cycling, which I enjoy both tremendously. I also do a bit of strength and conditioning at the moment as well. But we were at one of our outbuildings, we actually converted to a gym during COVID. And we actually said that we can't go on a ski as a family. We said we can't go on a skiing holiday, so we're going to buy gym equipment instead. So we built a gym which is used by all 5 of us extensively at home. So for me, being physically fit and strong drives my mental fitness. So my mind and body, you know, my mind is very strong and knows that I need to do it. If I do let it slip, my physical kind of fitness, my wife and children we are the first, because they realise my life would be imbalanced, which is probably not a good thing.
How old are the children now?
So they're 22. So son just done his master's degree in marine biology. Wants to go travelling, not the right time. Daughter 19, just about to go to Loughborough. To do sports science, and 16-year-old son just very thankful he doesn't have to take GCSEs. But they're very sporty as well. So that whole physical awareness, being, you know, but aware that I need to be physically fit and strong. None of us are perfect, Jonathan. There are days where I will have a glass of wine or a beer, or, you know, and the next day I won't train. I don't beat myself up about it. You know, I might even miss a couple of days on the trot. You know, it's just about making sure that you've got that balance. And, you know, and I love socializing. I like going out with family, with clients, with friends, colleagues. So it's just about finding the right balance. And if it slips here and there, like I say, don't beat yourself up about it.
No, it's very good. And when you're with the CEOs Club on Clubhouse, we were talking about health and fitness the other day, and General James Bashall, who did airborne training with me, he was saying that now he and I are approaching 60. We have to look after the avoiding the junk miles. So he and I used to do lots of running with packs, and I did mountain marathons was my big thing. I hold a world record for the double mountain marathon in Cyprus. So one of these bizarre things. But I keep it down to 3K maximum once a week, and the rest of it, but like you, I do strength, HIIT training, Tabata, and also yoga. I do 30 minutes of yoga on the days when I'm not doing the HIIT training. And I find that just keeps me mentally in a much better place than I would otherwise be. Do you find the same?
100%. Yeah, I need it. So I get up early in the morning and do an hour to an hour and a half running, cycling, and a bit of strength and conditioning.
That's great.
Then have a shower, get ready, and I'm so focused then on the day. And the whole health and wellbeing piece. I've instigated within the business for my senior leadership teams that they actually get annual reviews for their physical health, which is also aligned to their mental health as well, because I want them to be focused on it as much as I am. And we've seen massive improvements in their physical health over the last 12 months.
That's really good. And what some of the other CEOs and I do is when we're doing coaching, we do walking meetings. So wherever they are and wherever I'm, we're both walking. And I think when we get back to the being able to see people, perhaps you ought to have a sort of meeting. Okay, so the board meeting is on the top of Ben Nevis. See you there.
and I think that will happen, Jonathan. I mean, prior to COVID, we'd seen a shift from, client entertaining around, whether it was a lunch and a dinner, moving more towards going cycling or going, even a game of golf where you're going to walk 7 or 8K, or if it be 10K. But we were actually doing entertaining around walking, cycling. And through COVID, I've seen a lot of my colleagues actually meet up with clients when it's permitted and actually going for walks. Yeah. And I expect that to continue, which is fantastic.
Yeah, no, I think it's people will want it. Now they've had a taste of it. This is an endemic, it's not a pandemic. So, the scientists that I know said, prepare for at least 2 years, maybe 3 years, who knows how longer. And we've got used to, looking after our own fitness and health at home, and also wanting to do things differently. And I think we won't go back to anything. It will be going forward to different things.
Yeah.
The next one round the compass is emotional and social intelligence. So, your ability to influence and persuade people, particularly in your job as a CEO, you're herding cats all the time. They all want to go off and do different things. And you got to keep a sort of board or shareholders happy with what goes on. And then clients as well, they want to see the CEO. You've got to be there. And that all needs that wonderful old book from 92 years ago, How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, which is still a classic. And if you haven't reread it in the last year, get it and reread it. On my website, jonathanperks.com, you'll find book reviews, and you've got my favorites. They've all got scores, percentile scores. It's number one. And even though it's 92 years old, it's number one. And there's some other reviews on there. Just have a look, and you can click on it and go through and get the audible version or the read. But what about your the skills you've learned over the years to develop your emotional and social intelligence, which is good. I just know from our conversations it's been good. But how did you learn it?
I was always a very sociable person, and that has always stood me in good stead. And I've had some really good mentors in my life as well, especially when I was younger, whether it was my father or whether it's some of the mentors that I had in early business life, who I'm still very good friends with. And they were really good for me in terms of, from a business perspective, how to spend time with clients. Big thing I always stand by is that, we've got 2 ears and 1 mouth for a purpose, i.e. to listen. So I'm a big advocate of listening and learning. And I love going out and having conversations with people and learning. Big part of my life has always been about continuous learning, continuous improvement, constantly reading around subject matters that are important to me from a business perspective. So I think it's just never becoming complacent, always reading, learning, listening. And I mean, there was one mentor I always remember. He used to say to me, before you go and meet someone new, research the person, right? And it was all around not just their business lives, but where you could their personal lives, and understand what their interests were, sporting perspectives, and those type of elements. And I still do that. I find I do it subconsciously around people. I naturally try and find out as much as I can about people, find that common ground. And once you've got that common ground, a platform to engage on, then it's, I find it very easy to build strong, lasting relationships.
Yeah.
And I've been incredibly fortunate that people that I've met in our industry, which is a sociable industry, construction, real estate, very sociable, but, I've got friends for life that were clients, and I'm very thankful of that in terms of, our industry and how sociable it is. Like I say, it's a very strong friendships.
Yeah, well, it's so interesting from the emotional intelligence side to the cultural intelligence side, which is sort of from person-centric to the organization. Because Gleed is global, and you've enjoyed your travel, and you want to live life to the full. You've experienced a lot of different places around the world, different people around the world. What have you learned about having greater cultural intelligence quotient, CQ, which is linked to emotional intelligence, but also it's linked to equality and diversity and inclusion. So tell me about your views on that.
Well, like I said at the start, I mean, I was very fortunate that we had quite a culturally diverse upbringing in terms of locations that we went to or people coming to our house. So, and from literally, I think the first time I went traveling on my own, I was 16. So I spent a lot of time traveling, and not, I wouldn't say traveling to locations that at the time, lots of tourists were going to. I remember a classic where I got a flight and 3 days accommodation in Cairo. My return flight was a month later, and ended up getting a bus from Cairo to Suez and then down into the Sinai Peninsula, living with the Bedouin.
Wow.
Which is, doing some stuff like that, which now would be a bit crazy, but I've experienced some wonderful cultures, meeting some wonderful people. I experienced great food, and that great landscapes. I love walking, climbing. I love the mountains. I love the coastline. So I've been incredibly lucky with all of that. And I've also got a love of ancient history as well. So I've spent a lot of time in Greece and Turkey, etc. So, so that I would say I'm very, my cultural intelligence is very high. And I think that grounding for me and the traveling I've done, I only see human beings, and it's difficult to kind of explain that, but I just see human beings. I struggle with, I don't class people by gender, by ethnicity, etc., etc. So I just see a human being, and I think a lot of that was again from my upbringing as well. So, and I and my team are very focused on the whole diverse and inclusive agenda within our business. We are. It's high on our agenda. We're involved with a number of initiatives around the world. I would say our gender mix is pretty strong. We've got work to do around ethnicity mix. We know that. But yeah, I mean, it's as a business, as a family, which the Gleeds businesses are, I class them as a family. We are very attuned to that, and we are a very culturally diverse business. So it's very high on our agenda.
Yeah, well, one of the guys you're going to enjoy meeting, and I'm interviewing him soon, is Dawid Kotniahulu. And Reddington is his business. He's been a CEO before, but he's got together a number of other people to get, by the next 5 years, 10,000 black interns in some of the big city financial banks and firms. And it's really, things like this are really good initiatives. In all your travel, and it's I've traveled a lot, as a young army officer, and but to go to Cairo and then go down the Sinai Peninsula and live with a Bedouin. I mean, you need a certain amount of resilience and just, okay, I had a few days accommodation booked, and then I was there for a month. That's just brilliant. Now, as you say, these days people are too worried about getting attacked by terrorists, and also, but still people do travel. And I have an ambition to go to Peru on a men's retreat one day when I can afford to. And we go to Machu Picchu, and it's called the Humble Alpha Retreat. And you're just all there taking sort of certain plant medicine and thinking about your life purpose and stuff. So if it's good, I'll get you to come with me. But with all that travel, you need a lot of resilience to cope with adversity and setbacks and disappointments. With your ancient history love of Greece and Rome, I wonder if you've come across Marcus Aurelius and Seneca and Epictetus and the Stoics, because I'm a great follower of the Stoics, and I found that's helped me with the many problems I've made in my own life and setbacks and disappointments that I've had. What's your way of coping with adversity by having resilience to get through things?
I think the first thing, Jonathan, is we've actually got a team down in Peru at the moment.
Oh, wow.
We've set up an office in Lima in the last 12 months. Where we're helping to build the infrastructure and social infrastructure that was taken out in the 2017 El Nino event. Yeah. So it's a government-to-government initiative, which we're incredibly proud to be a part of. But I think, resilience, and we've seen, what a strong word that we've seen over the last 15 months, and how resilient people have been in these difficult times. And I think I've seen it in staff, colleagues, family. In the second quarter last year, where people were struggling, but then I saw third, fourth quarter, and now people very strong and resilient. And I keep, for me, that resilience, I have to come back to my physical, the exercise, my mental well-being. That gives me my karma, allows me to deal with adversity. So, I mean, the first thing that I will do when I face a difficult situation is go for a long run or a long bike ride, or a long swim, and I will spend normally a run or a swim, because it's a bit dangerous sometimes to do on a bike, but I'm developing options, strategies in my head about looking at all the scenario planning, looking at what I need to achieve, and then come back and then just calmly go through it. It takes away the adrenaline that adversity brings, or those horrible endorphins, as it were. So for me, it's about really focusing, getting focused, getting mentally in the right state of mind to deal with the adversity that we all face. I mean, we've all had issues to deal with in our lives, and it's just about coping. Some may cope by having a drink or anything else, but for me, it's about bike ride or run.
That's a good one. That's a good one. That's much healthier.
Or a long walk. But it just allows you to think calmly, and you might have a long walk and finish up at a pub, but at least you've thought calmly through it. And so that whole mental and physical resilience gives me, my mental and physical health gives me my resilience and strength.
Brilliant. Okay, well, we're down to the last few questions. I'll just sort of fire these off very briefly. We'll talk about brand, then we'll talk about legacy, then about exec teams, favorite book, and then your final 2-minute top tip. So what about 360 feedback? So you know what people think about you. When was the last time you've had some 360 feedback?
So I get 360 feedback once a year in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
I also have feedback from my non-execs, so which I appreciate as well hugely. So yeah, I'm a big advocate of 360 feedback, listening, learning. I give my exec team feedback every quarter, at the end of every quarter. We've got a very open and honest and trusting relationship at our board level, so it doesn't bring any adversity if I make comments, which is always good. It's like, well, how can we improve? So I think, for me, 360 is incredibly important. Again, I'll go back to my earlier point about listening and learning.
Yeah.
And we've done a lot of staff surveys, again, globally through the last 12 months, to listen about what our staff want for the future as well, and that we'll continue with that. We want kind of 360 back from up to the management boards about what staff are looking for in the future, because it's going to be challenging once we come out of lockdown, as we find out the new equilibrium and balance in our lives from the work-life balance perspective. So, and I think for me as well, when you talk about the brand as well, that Gleeds has got a very strong brand, an amazing heritage, 136 years old, and our brand is really built around that heritage, the strength, the resilience, and together with a very multi-diverse culture. Plus now with a big, plus we were always focused on the environment, but more focus on the environment, more focus on innovation and digital agendas. But we're constantly looking to improve. And for me, you only get that by having 360 reviews that help you improve that brand. And so sometimes it's really difficult to make sure that your culture is reflected in your brand. So we're spending a lot of work on that at the moment. And I always said probably about this time last year, actually, when I was communicating to staff, either on Zoom, Teams, or by letters, that Gleeds has been around for 136 years, has survived many world wars, depressions, recessions, always comes out of a crisis stronger. And we are stronger today than we were 12 months ago.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And it's you made me think of a number of things that, particularly hearing from staff and other CEOs, one of them said the three things he was focusing on was digitization of his business, ESG, and diversity, inclusion, and equality as his three major drivers. And other CEOs agreed that was key for them too. And one of them I encouraged to have reverse mentoring. So he's picked a young woman from different ethnic background to him to be his mentee, but his reverse mentor. So she comes on board meetings and sits and listens in, and afterwards, or even publicly, he says, what's your thoughts? And she'll say things like, well, you've not thought at all about the younger generation. This is a bunch of old white blokes having a chat about them and their mates. And it's a really good challenge. So I would encourage you, if you haven't tried it, to experiment with having a reverse mentor. So you mentor them, but they also mentor you back, and they sit in on some of your meetings, and they just give a perspective that you haven't even thought about.
A great idea. And I was just going to say, on those three topics you mentioned, obviously we've got a clear focus on those. The only other one is, well, you've seen, because of my personal experiences, is mental health. That's it's just making sure that as we move forward, that our my colleagues are all in the right place and have the right support. We have a whole, for this year, we've got a whole mental health awareness program, which can focus in on like giving financial advice, or we've got once a week we do a thing called desk exercise, or we're doing yoga, and so we've got a whole calendar which is designed specifically around mental health. And I said the mental health first aiders as well, which is it's a fantastic course. So yeah, I think great for businesses to use that more as well.
Fantastic. No, fully support that, and cannot understate it. So tonight at 6 or 7, Brian Hayworth is on Clubhouse, and he and I talk about that. And he's the chairman of the City Mental Health Alliance, which works with a number of different organizations about mental health. So it's a big thing among many of the leaders. Legacy, what would you like your legacy to be in your work and your life, Graham? What would it be?
Well, my legacy in terms of my personal life was, strong, obviously a strong family ethos, as I explained, and I want to continue. If anything, I want to do more with charities. I may get back into some coaching as well, which I do miss, because all of that and that being involved with communities gives me great personal satisfaction. And I still, ultimately my legacy, I like I say, I want to go across that finishing line. So exactly. So for that, and that is like a series of goals I've got in all of that. I think from a Gleeds perspective, I go back to the purpose of what we're doing and the way we're building lasting legacies in the built environment, to really help deliver schools faster, quicker, cheaper, better. Being involved with like the rebuilding of infrastructure in Peru again gives me tremendous satisfaction. We want to do more programs like that. So I really want to help not just shaping the built environment, but building communities, sustainable communities and societies. And my utopia as well is also for Gleeds to be the employer of choice in our sector, and by that it does bring a lot of those agenda items that we discussed around D&I and ESG and digital and mental health, etc., because that is what is important to people now, certainly the younger generations. We want to give people clear career paths. Yes, we want to remunerate them well, but they actually want to be in a business that has higher ethical standards, has a strong purpose, and as we've seen with, as I said earlier, with strong values that are resilient. And I think if you get that right, and that's our goal as a business, is where people want to come to work with us for what we do in communities and society and the way we go about it.
Yeah, it's interesting with your sporting background and your whole attitude. You use a lot of words, not like I, it's about we and us, which takes me nicely on to the next, the last of the 3 questions. Executive teams is all about there is no I in team. And what have you done to create a high-performing team? And in the past, when you've been in a toxic team, how did you turn a toxic team around?
Yeah, I'm incredibly fortunate. I've got a very, very strong exec management board around me. Lots of strength, lots of experience. It's a high-performing team. So I'm very, very fortunate. The key thing for me in terms of that team, and probably there will be some sporting analogies in there, was make sure they understand their role and their responsibilities, and make sure they understand what we expect or what I expect as performance levels, and that enables the whole team to perform. So yeah, I think I know we've created a very a strong, high-performing team by the culture we've got at that table. and then that will naturally cascade down into the other teams. And I see that as I go into my other regions globally. You can see some real kind of strong behaviours in terms of any toxic teams or individuals. My view is you deal with them very quickly, very decisively. Toxic team members or team members that do bad behaviours, they're dangerous for the business. It can spread. The bad behaviours can spread very quickly. So my advice there is you deal with it very quickly.
Yeah, it's like a bushfire. You've got to put it out quite quickly, and help them find their happiness elsewhere. And as you see with some characters, and I couldn't possibly comment on presidents, but there's certain people who are on the sort of white collar psychopath, narcissistic spectrum, and you have to call them out. They're charming, diplomatic, and but they are so manipulative. And they not only do they take out their boss, who normally is about to work them out, but then they try and suck up to the boss's boss, so the boss gets taken out rather than takes them out. And then they move up the chain, and they've got to go. People emigrate to avoid those kind of people. They won't be changed. I'm a great believer, as you said, learning and listening and development and lifelong learning. You and I are the incomplete leader with a complete team, but you will occasionally come across people who, whatever you do, their character is fundamentally flawed, and they are obsessed about status and power for themselves, not for the good of their organization. Last two questions. What would be your favorite book on leadership or character or neuroscience? And then we'll do a recording of your favorite top tip at the end, which stands on its own as well.
Choosing a book management book that I could say is like influenced me more than others. It's really difficult. Because Simon Sinek I like a lot, and I've got a pile of books on my desk at the moment, so it's very difficult. There was one actually that I read on holiday when we could go on holiday a few years ago, which I enjoyed it so much. I've read very quickly and completely aligned with some of your thinking and my thinking. It was a book, probably by someone you know actually, called The Warrior, the Strategist and You, by a guy called Floyd Woodrow.
Okay, no.
And I reached out to Floyd on LinkedIn when I was on holiday and just said, read your book, I think it's really good. And actually Floyd now has become a good friend. So I think, and it's one of those books that I thought I've got to reach out to this person and just say I really enjoyed your book. Lots around, obviously a lot of what's important to me around the having a goal and the mental, physical awareness, etc. So that was the one that I suppose just because I reached out to him, which I wouldn't normally do, obviously.
Yeah, so, no, it is nice, and one of the great joys I've had of interviewing authors. And David Marquet wrote "Turn the Ship Around" and "Leadership as Language." Was a captain of the USS Santa Fe, and I interviewed him recently and found him very profound. And I recommend both his books. They're in my top 5. And also then Nancy Klein, who wrote a fantastic book called "The Promise That Changes Everything. I Won't Interrupt You." And that is profound. So let's go into our final 2 minutes. If you just briefly would introduce yourself again, Graham, tell the people listening, because it's going to stand on its own as well as being part of this, who you are, what your firm does, and then what your practical tip is and why it matters to you and why you think people would enjoy it. So over to you, Graham.
Yeah, hi, I'm Graham Harle. I'm the CEO of Gleeds. Gleeds are a global international real estate and construction consultancy business with around 80 offices and 2,000 employees. My practical bit of advice was largely related to COVID and the pandemic. And I kept saying to people, remember all of the good that you've achieved through the pandemic and continue doing them, but also pick up on all the positives that you were doing before the pandemic. People have started walking, running, as well as cycling more, and those things need to continue. But as well as the physical, there are also the spiritual and emotional aspects that makes all human. And I think if you can find that balance between spending quality time with your colleagues, families, and then maintain your important values in life as we move out of the pandemic and life returns to normal, I think we'll all find a much better balance in our lives.
Graham, brilliant. And thank you so much for being on. Stay on the line. We'll have a chat when the recording ends. But
Sure.
Thank you very much for sharing your wisdom, your experience, and your life stories. It's been fascinating. Thank you, Graham.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. Really enjoyed it. Thank you.